The 2024 Nissan Sentra is one of the most underrated vehicles in the compact sedan segment. And in this video, I'm going to show you all the reasons why, as well as going over the exterior, the interior, going for a drive and seeing how it drives and handles, as well as my thoughts on the fuel economy and the pricing and how it compares to the competition. But anyway, first thing, getting into the exterior here, it looks really nice. So for 2024, the Sentra gets a slight refresh here. You have new headlights, a new front bumper design here, the new grille now has a new SR design badge there. You also have the new Nissan badge that they've been rolling out across the whole lineup. And I think it's a nice change up front here. It's subtle. It doesn't mess up the already good looks you had on the Sentra for the pre-refresh, but I think that this, slightly freshens it up a little bit and looks great, especially here in this orange color with the black two-tone option you have with the black roof. It looks so cool. You also have some new wheel designs here, and those are a nice touch as well. And then going out to the back here on the SR trim, you'll have a new rear bumper design. The other bumper designs carry over for the S and SV trims, but looks nice out back there as well. A little sportier now with that new rear bumper, and overall still just a really nice looking vehicle. The interior is one of the reasons why this is one of the most underrated sedans in this segment. And so as far as this interior, it hasn't really changed for 2024. Unfortunately, we don't get the nice bigger screen that you get in the Sylphy, which is the version of the Sentra sold elsewhere in the world. We're still stuck with the 8-inch screen here and these top trim 7-inch screen as standard, and they don't have wireless Apple CarPlay or wireless Android Auto. You still have to plug in your phone, which most of the other competitors do have the wireless thing these days. So that is a bummer for sure. But outside of that one caveat, this is honestly one of the plushest interiors in this segment. I think only the Mazda 3 outdoes it, but this is roomier than the Mazda 3, and it has like padding down by your knees here. You have metal plated switchgear here, which feels almost as nice as the Honda Civics. Honda Civic is a little bit nicer feeling, the Mazda is a little nicer feeling, but outside of those two, this is really nice. And this has, more padding and more plushness than even the Civic. So I think in some ways this is actually nicer than the Civic interior. And, just again, only the Mazda 3 I think beats this as far as being a luxurious interior. And it's amazing because this is one of the lowest priced vehicles in this segment as well. And so the fact that it's one of the cheapest with one of the nicest interiors, hello, why is there not more praise for the Sentra interior? And other cool stuff, you have a heated steering wheel, which almost none of the competitors even offer. You have heated seats, everything you could really want here. You also have a nice roomy back seat, good amount of leg room and headroom for someone that's 5'9" like myself, a really wide trunk, really big trunk for a vehicle this size as well. And so, all around, it just is a really nice interior, and I think it deserves more praise than it gets. And if you'd like to hear more about the Sentra interior, my wife and I did a full in-depth interior review on this vehicle back in 2020 whenever these first came out for this generation. And so that'll be a 10-minute deep dive going into all the features, all the little nooks and crannies of this interior. If you want to hear all that detail, I will link that video at the end of this one. But overall, yeah, I just really love the Sentra interior. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Sentra here does get Nissan's new key now. Not only does it have the new logo, but it's a new design, which is welcome because they were using their same old key for over a decade. So it's so nice to see a new key, a little bit bigger than the old one, but definitely feels a little nicer, a little bit of metal trim on the sides here, and overall really good key. But of course it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start here in these upper trims. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the Sentra. So the first thing you notice about this vehicle, I think the first thing I notice is I love the driving position. You're sitting, a little bit higher than maybe some of the other sedan competitors, but not so high that you feel like you're sitting up super high like a Jetta. It feels like you're almost in a crossover. This is really just a great sitting position. You have great visibility, pretty thin A-pillars, great view out of the sides and out of the back. And I also love these seats. These Nissan zero gravity seats that you have here. They are, I'd say, actually the most comfortable in this segment. I love sitting in these seats. I would drive this thing cross country with zero complaints. It is just I could sit in this seat all day. I really love it. So that's all great. The other things here, so a couple of big changes for 2024. First off is there's a new Xtronic CVT transmission here that's supposed to have smoother shifts or simulated shifts because it doesn't have any actual real gears like any other CVT. So it used to really do a good job of mimicking a regular automatic, and now with these changes it's actually a little more smooth, which is good if you're someone who wants that smoothness above all else. But the downside is that it feels less like a regular automatic, and so it felt a little more slushy, and I actually don't love the way that it feels now. It's not the worst by any means. I think there's some others that have even more annoying CVTs, but I actually prefer the previous CVT's tuning. Now, they say that extra smoothness and I guess a little bit of extra efficiency does help with fuel economy ratings. The other thing, though, that helps with fuel economy ratings is that you now have a start-stop system as standard, and you can turn it off. There's a little button down here to turn it off if you'd like, but you know, that's going to help just obviously so you're not wasting gas sitting when you're stopped. And you know, nice that you have the option to turn it off still, but in my experience it was actually really smooth. Didn't turn off at really annoying times too often, and you know, wasn't too rough with the restart, and overall a pretty good you know, start-stop system. And so not a big deal there to have that added, and that does help you. The city EPA rating has jumped up by 2 mpg compared to before, and so I mean, it goes from 28 mpg to 30, so a nice improvement there if you do leave that on. I also love the throttle response here. I mean, like, see, it hopped down a gear and still feels pretty good, so I don't want to beat up on this CVT too much. It still is, you know, a good feeling CVT, but I mean, throttle response, it's good and responsive. Brakes also feel really nice. Start to bite right towards the top of the pedal, but they're not too hard to get used to using, and just really well done. But turning down onto this back road here, and let's see how the acceleration is. Here we go. So see, it has little upshifts there, and it actually feels pretty good. And you know, a lot of reviews will say this is one of the slowest in the segment, which is true. This has a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, naturally aspirated. It does 149 horsepower and 146 pound-feet of torque. And 0 to 60 is just under 9 seconds. So yes, it's one of the slowest in the bunch, but honestly, it doesn't feel bad. For around town driving, at least here, you know, where we have windy roads and things like that. Maybe if you live in a place with wide open spaces where you need 500 horsepower to not feel slow, you know, I could see that maybe. But, you know, if you live in a place where you don't have a ton of room to open up a car anyway, this is really fine. I've had no complaints with power whatsoever this entire week that I've been driving. I didn't get to put a ton of miles on it, but this is, again, my second week of experiencing one of these. I had one of these for a week back in 2020 as well. But I don't know, I think the power is totally fine. Unless you're an enthusiast, in that case, you should be looking for, you know, something a little sportier than this anyway. But, you know, for the average person, there's going to be plenty of power, and, you know, it's a really efficient motor. It's responsive, it gives me the downshifts and the power that I want, and overall just is a really nice you know, powertrain combo in my opinion. And now we're on this road that usually generates some more road noise, and I mean, you hear a little bit here, but honestly it's not bad. I mean, it's not as quiet as maybe the Mazda 3, which I think is the most refined in this segment, but I think I'm totally happy. Again, for a vehicle in this price point, totally quiet, very refined, nice smooth ride as well, even though this one has these 18-inch wheels here on these sportier SR trims. Still totally fine from a ride quality standpoint in my opinion as well. But coming up some corners here that I always take, and let's see how the Sentra handles. So, diving in, and it's really good. I like that the steering has a little bit of weight to it, but it's not quite as weighty as a Mazda 3, but it has a good amount of heft and just feels sporty. I love the flat bottom on the wheel here. You know, it just handles itself really well. We've already caught up to some traffic here, so not like I was going to push this a whole lot anyway. We do some slightly damp roads here, and this car, like most front-wheel drive vehicles, you know, will have a tendency to understeer a little bit if you know, push it a little bit, but you know, overall, just a really good handling vehicle. It's nice and flat, it feels nice and low. These are also, even though they only weigh about 3,100 pounds, it feels a little weightier than that, just with the way the steering is tuned and all that, so that it feels substantial. It feels a little more larger, I guess, as far as the handling, in a good way. You know, some of the other competitors, like the Toyota Corolla, feels really light, and that can also cause it to feel, while it does handle very well, it just doesn't feel like it's the most solid vehicle on the road. This just has a more planted feel. It feels more stable as a result of, you know, just that slightly weightier feel that it has. But still, again, loves being tossed around, and is still just a really nice thing to drive. And I've really enjoyed it. I've taken on lots of corners here in the past few days, and it's always a good thing to drive around corners. Another thing that helps is you also have an independent rear suspension, which is something that many of the other competitors do not have. And so it gives you a little bit of extra sophistication in the back end there, just to help it to be a little bit more refined for the ride quality and the handling. A couple other little observations during my time here with the Sentra. First off is that the coolant gauge every once in a while is like jittery, and it like jumps around a little bit as it starts to move. Just kind of strange. Not something that I've seen on a vehicle since like classic cars that kind of had the bouncing gauges. Not sure if that's just this vehicle or what. I also hear a slight little rattle somewhere under the dashboard. Again, could just be this car, but just make sure that, you know, if you test drive a Sentra and you're considering it, that it's, you know, rattle free and issue free as far as all that stuff goes. One thing that I'm really happy with though is this Bose stereo. It's a Bose stereo in a Sentra, and it sounds really good. It might not sound quite as good as the Bose system that's available in the Mazda 3 and in the Honda Civic, but it's close. And I'd say outside of those two, once again, this is the best sounding stereo in the segment. I think it sounds better than the JBL stereo in the Corolla, although that sounds pretty good too. But yeah, I think this is definitely upper mid-pack as far as stereos goes. Also, this heated steering wheel is really nice to have, but it also gets really hot, and after a few minutes you got to turn it off because it gets so hot that it's uncomfortable to hold. And it's not like some other heated steering wheels where you can just leave them on and have them keep your hands toasty the whole time. This one you're gonna have to play around with the button there because it does get you know, pretty hot here after a few minutes. But now we're out on the highway here in the Sentra, and I have the adaptive cruise control system on, which is something you do get on everything except the base trim. When you go up to the SV trim, you do get that adaptive cruise control system, and this one even has the 360 camera system here in this SR, which is certainly nice to have as well. But those two things are again optional. But standard safety equipment is really good. You have blind spot monitoring as standard, which is something most other companies still make you pay extra for. You also do have automatic emergency braking, rear cross traffic alert is standard. You know, a lot of really good stuff here. The only thing I will say is that while there's a lane departure warning, there isn't a lane keep assist. And most other systems and most other vehicles these days do have a lane keep assist function that's standard, or at least standard on, you know, most trims. And here, even in a fully loaded one, I have no lane keeping assist whatsoever. So, you know, obviously if you like doing your own driving, that's no problem. But, you know, just as far as feature content goes, that is something that this doesn't have that most of the other competitors do have. But the adaptive cruise system otherwise has been working well. And out here on the highway, you know, it's a really nice cruiser here. You know, I mean, it's a really windy day, so you might hear a little more wind noise and road noise than you normally would in a Sentra, but overall, just has been a really nice little highway cruiser, although I've done very little highway driving here, but you know, no complaints with it here so far. The one other thing, though, I do want to mention about safety is crash test ratings. And that is one area, if you are someone who's concerned about safety, where the Sentra is towards the bottom of the pack as far as how it performs. Now, it used to be, you know, a really good performer. It's just with the IAHS making their tests a little more demanding recently, where the Sentra is no longer a top safety pick award winner like most of the other competitors are. The only competitor that does a worse crash rating now is the Volkswagen Jetta in this segment. Otherwise, though, everything else this competes against is going to be a top safety pick or a top safety pick plus award winner, and this is neither. You know, it's still going to be a very safe car and still does pretty well on, you know, all the usual tests. But just worth noting, if you are someone who, you know, is really focused on safety, most of the other competitors outside of the Jetta are going to be a safer choice as far as those ratings go. Now, like I mentioned earlier, fuel economy for the Sentra has been improved here with this new CVT. So it now does 30 mpg in the city, 38 on the highway, and 33 combined. And I mean, like I said, that's 2 mpg better on the city rating than before, 1 mpg better on the highway. And in my driving here, I did about 60 miles of driving. So I mean, it's still showing me a nearly full tank of gas. And you know, not a ton of miles. I'm sure the more I drive, the better the fuel economy would get. But I'm showing a 26.5 mpg rating here in my driving. Of course, that's going to come down to, you know, your driving style, where you're driving, how you're driving. You know, your mileage will vary. But, you know, I'm coming in, you know, at 3.5 mpg less than the city rating. I typically do 1 to 2 mpg less than city rating typically, so this is a little lower than usual, but I am driving this vehicle a little less than I usually do, and so there might be, you know, some of that playing in here. And as I'm continuing to drive now, it's saying 26.8, so maybe it will eventually get up closer to that 30 mpg number, but I have no doubt that this vehicle is very fuel efficient. I'm sure, you know, if you take it easy, you'll be able to get some pretty good fuel economy here in it. And the last thing to mention though is the pricing and how this compares to the competition. So these start right around $22,000, one of the lowest starting prices in this segment. And I mean, it's a lot of car even at that base trim, again, because you have so much safety equipment as standard, so much comfort. You know, it's just, I think, a really well done for 22 grand. It's going to be tough to argue with, to be totally honest. And I think that's, you know, where it's very underappreciated as well. And this fully loaded SR premium trim is just over $28,000. And, you know, for that price point, again, you get heated steering wheel. The premium package basically just gives you the 360 camera, the Bose stereo, and the moonroof, which are all, you know, nice things to have. But if you don't need those things, you can save yourself $2,500 and, you know, get an SR here, you know, for, you know, right around 25 grand or so still, or 26. But this is why it's so underrated, because that is basically the cheapest price in this whole segment. The only one that comes in cheaper is the Hyundai Elantra, which comes in $40 cheaper. And for those $40, the Elantra, I mean, I spent a week with an Elantra a couple of years ago. I mean, you still have hard plastic. It's not nearly as plush as this. The driving experience isn't as good in my opinion. Their CVT isn't quite as enjoyable as this one is. And the whole thing just feels cheaper. The only thing that the Hyundai has going for it over this is the fact that that is a top safety pick award winner. And also it does have the both screens as standard. So you have digital gauges, you have a bigger 10-inch screen in the middle here. And, you know, this, you know, still makes do with just a little screen in between the analog gauges. You know, this is just a little more old-fashioned feeling as far as the tech compared to the Hyundai. So if tech is your priority and you need to stay at the bottom of the price point ladder structure here for the compact sedan class, the Hyundai will be the better choice there. Or if you want, you know, the slightly better safety rating. Outside of that though, the Sentra, to me, if I was on a budget, this would be my pick, hands down, because it's so nice to live with, it's so plush, it's so well done in my opinion. Once you get beyond the Elantra, everything else is going to be over $1,000 more expensive. So you have the Corolla, that's about $1,500 more expensive. Also doesn't feel nearly as nice on the interior. It's harder plastic. Now it's durable, and I mean the Corolla is famous for its longevity, so I mean, you know, if you want something that's going to run until the end of time, Corolla is probably going to be your best pick, but you got to pay a premium for that reliability. It's $1,500 extra for that. Corolla, you know, comparably equipped to this, and even with that, you know, extra $1,500, you still don't have a heated steering wheel. You still don't have full leather seats. You know, there's still some downfalls there. Now it does have like wireless Apple CarPlay, which is nice. You have the option for a hybrid. You have the option for all-wheel drive, two things that the Sentra does not offer here. So there's certainly, you know, some advantages to the Corolla if you're willing to spend a few bucks extra. But again, you're going to sacrifice the interior niceties, and you know, it's also, like I said, just feels just not as solid from, you know, a handling standpoint, and this just feels a little more refined as far as the handling goes. The next one up, and still probably my favorite vehicle in this segment if you're not worried about pricing, is the Mazda 3. Now the Mazda 3 is about $2,000 more expensive. Now $2,000 does give you, again, the most premium interior in this segment, but it's also the tightest interior in this segment with, you know, less legroom in the back, a smaller trunk, less room up front here really, you know, a bunch of stuff like that. And also now for 2024, you can't even get the Bose stereo unless you go up to the turbo trim for the Mazda 3, which is $35,000. And so unfortunately, you know, as far as stereo goes, you're actually gonna have a downgrade in the Mazda 3, but all the other niceties are better in the Mazda there. It's also gonna be the safest one of the bunch with a Top Safety Pick Plus award, which is great that it has that there if you're someone who's concerned about that stuff. You know, and also you have more power in the Mazda 3. It's 191 horsepower. I mean, you're talking 40 more horsepower than what this vehicle has. It also has a regular 6-speed automatic transmission, so that more traditional feel. And so, you know, for all those reasons, the Mazda 3 is really compelling, but again, you got to pay $2,000 extra. The Volkswagen Jetta is also $2,000 more expensive, and while it again gives you the double screens there for the digital gauges and for the infotainment, that's really, you know, going to be worse with the safety rating. And the only thing it has going for is the fact you can get cooled seats in the Jetta, which you can't get here in this and in basically any of the other competitors. So cooled seats are nice, especially if you live in a place where it gets really hot. That could win you over for the Jetta alone. But outside of that, the Jetta really, you know, isn't a strong competitor these days. And then really the last one to mention here is the Honda Honda Civic. And the Honda Civic is $3,500 more expensive for a comparable trim, which also has the Bose stereo, the leather seats. That's a touring trim for the Civic. Unfortunately, that bumps you up to the turbocharged engine, which gives you more power instead of the base Civic's engine. There's no way to get, a similar power level to this in the Civic with all the niceties that this has. So, for, again, $3,500 extra for the Civic. And yes, the Civic has nicer switchgear. The Civic does drive a little bit nicer and has more power there, especially in that touring trim. But again, $3,500 is a big chunk of change when you're talking about something in the $20,000 range. And so, for those to be crossing over the $30,000 mark for a Civic, again, comparably equipped, and it's also worth noting you have no padding down by your knees. So outside of the nice metal knobs and stuff, the Civic interior, while it might be durable and again might last a long time, you just don't have the plushness you have here with the Sentra. And so while, the Civic is a popular choice, everyone loves the Civic, it's just, again, you're paying a premium for the Civic name and for, hopefully potential, durability there of it and all of that, but it's just something you are going to be, having to pay a premium for. The Civic also has no heated steering wheel, but it does have a top safety pick award as well, so that is going to be, one of the safer ones as far as that goes too. So that is certainly two other little perks there of the Civic. And the only other little competitor to mention very briefly is the Kia K4, which was just announced and is coming this summer. That's going to be the successor to the Forte, which is going away, which is why I didn't mention that in the list of competitors here. The K4, we don't have pricing for that yet, but it's going to be a bigger vehicle than the Forte, has, top-notch tech, looks like a really impressive interior. I will hopefully be, reviewing one of those later this year. Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned if you want to hear my review on the K4, but that could be another potential competitor that's worth checking out. And so the bottom line here for the Sentra is that, you just have, all the same stuff as the competitors, basically, for one of the cheapest prices in this segment, and it's got it all. It's got, great driving dynamics. I love the comfort of these seats. Everything that it does, it just does really well. And, again, to do it at such a low price point, I think is why this is a really underappreciated vehicle. You hear everyone have so much love for the Corolla and for the Civic, and rightly so. They're famous for their reliability, their quality, and for, their fun natures. But, I think the Sentra has always been this underdog that doesn't get a lot of attention, but I think that it really should, because it's really, an unbeatable value proposition in my opinion, and just a really good little car. So anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the 2024 Sentra. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Nissan for providing me here at this Sentra to review for you guys today. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.